A young, dumb boy named Taekyung was enjoying a sunny afternoon with his parents. He was filled with pure excitement because his father had promised to take him on the famous Dragon Express ride. At that moment, Taekyung believed that life was perfect and that his biggest challenge was simply getting to the front of the line. However, the world changed in a heartbeat when a real monster suddenly appeared and turned the theme park into a scene of heat and chaos. Taekyung was left alone in the middle of a nightmare, watching as everything he loved vanished into the smoke. After surviving that unthinkable tragedy, Taekyung grew up with a single goal in mind, which was to become a hunter and prevent others from suffering the same fate. He quickly learned that the world had transformed into a place where women held almost all the power. In this new society, female hunters were the ultimate guardians and celebrities, while men were rarely granted high ranks. Taekyung found himself in a very strange position because he was exceptionally handsome but possessed almost no combat strength. Instead of being a hero who fought monsters, he became a target of constant attention from his powerful female peers. High school life was less of an education and more of an endless ordeal of being treated like a rare prize. Taekyung could not even change his clothes without girls trying to take pictures or commenting on how cute he looked. His only protection came from his childhood friend named Kang Hoin, who would often scare away the other students with her fierce personality. She claimed him as her partner just to keep others at a distance, though Taekyung often felt that being under her wing was just another form of being managed like a pet. He spent his days feeling exhausted and wondering if he would ever truly become the warrior he dreamed of being. One evening, while he was lying in his room and feeling discouraged about his low rank, his phone suddenly buzzed with a mysterious notification. The screen announced that he had finally undergone an awakening, but the title of his new ability was something he had never heard of before. He was now officially designated as a manager for the intense, emotional, and cardio needs of high-ranking female hunters. The system explained that these powerful women carried a massive burden of stress and natural instincts that could not be easily controlled. According to the interface, Taekyung was the only one who could help them find balance and relief. As he looked closer at the details, Taekyung realized that he could earn special awakening points every time he helped a hunter manage her overwhelming energy. These points could then be traded for the legendary skills he had always wanted, such as master swordsmanship or powerful fire spells. It seemed like a very unusual way to become strong, but Taekyung decided he had nothing left to lose. He opened a map on the app and was shocked to see that the neighborhood was absolutely filled with high-level hunters who were currently struggling with their intense internal stress. Just as he was trying to process how many people nearby were in need of his assistance, a high-value signal on the map began moving directly toward his location. Taekyung watched in disbelief as the icon stopped right at his front door. He heard the sound of footsteps, and the door opened to reveal Hoon, standing there with a bright smile and a bag of food. He realized that the person the system identified as having the most urgent need for management was the very same girl who had been protecting him all along. Taekyung stood there in silence, realizing that his journey to becoming a top hunter was about to start in the most unexpected way possible. The evening sun began to fade as Taekyung and Hyun finished their meal together in the quiet of his home. Hyun was in high spirits and looked perfectly at home as she relaxed into more comfortable attire while humming a happy tune. Taekyung could not help but notice that she did not seem to have any intention of going home anytime soon. He watched her with a mixture of gratitude and complicated thoughts. After they finished eating, she insisted on doing the dishes to show her appreciation for his cooking, and Taekyung reflected on how she had been the one person who stayed by his side through everything after he lost his parents. As the sound of clinking dishes filled the kitchen, Taekyung found himself struggling with a serious internal dilemma. He knew that according to the system, the only way to gain the power he needed was to help Hyun manage her intense hunter energy and high levels of stress. He worried about whether it was right to cross the line from a long-standing friendship into something far more personal, especially since she was significantly more powerful than he was. He recalled an old memory from their school days, when she had teased him about the attention he received from other girls, and he had pretended to be completely bored by it all, just to hide his own awkwardness. Taekyung realized that he could no longer solve his problems by just sitting around and thinking about them. He knew that he had to take a brave step forward to earn the rare points that would finally change his destiny. Hoen turned to him with a bright smile and suggested that she stay for the night so they could finally catch up and watch movies together, since their busy schedules usually kept them apart. Taekyung recognized this as the perfect opportunity and decided he could not afford to be half-hearted if he wanted to succeed. He pushed aside his lingering hesitation and decided to act on the system's requirements by initiating a surprising level of sussy closeness. This sudden move caught Hun completely off guard, and her eyes widened in total shock. Taekyung felt a wave of nerves, but tried to maintain his composure by explaining that he had actually been hiding his true curiosity and feelings for a very long time. He admitted that his previous shy behavior was just a way to cover up how much he truly admired her presence. Hoon was initially stunned by his boldness because she was used to being the protector in their relationship. However, her expression quickly softened into one of genuine happiness as she realized that he was finally being open with her. She blushed deeply and told him that she would happily accept whatever he wanted to do as long as they were together. Taekyung felt his heart racing as he realized the mission was actually working and that the bond between them was growing in a direction he had never dared to imagine before. He marveled at the reality of the situation and the incredible connection he was finally making with the girl who had always been his closest ally. The morning sun brought a new sense of accomplishment as a digital notification confirmed that Taekyung had successfully fulfilled the conditions to receive a significant boost in points. Along with a healthy bonus, he found himself with a total of 95 fresh points and the exciting news that he could finally begin utilizing official hunter skills. As the clock struck 8 in the morning, he remained sprawled across his bed and looked like a man who had just finished an exhausting cardio marathon. He eventually reached for his buzzing phone to find several messages from Hoon, who had already left to handle her duties as a high-ranking hunter. She seemed to be in incredible spirits and told him to rest well while reassuring him that everything from the previous night was perfectly fine and that she would be back to see him soon. Taekyung looked at her sweet farewell and could not help but feel a bit dazed by how much their relationship had shifted in such a short amount of time. He lay there for a moment and reflected on the sheer intensity of their encounter, while acknowledging that he had not expected her to be so remarkably energetic. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, he sent a polite response wishing her a safe day and promising to see her again. When he finally gathered the energy to check his full system report, he was stunned to see that his total haul for the entire night was actually 340 points. The interface displayed a long list of specific achievements that he had unlocked, which made him realize that the system was keeping track of every single detail of his personal interactions. However, his moment of celebration was cut short by a sudden system alarm, which warned him that focusing on just one hunter for too long would eventually lead to diminishing rewards. It seemed the system wanted him to broaden his horizons and manage the needs of many different hunters if he wanted to keep gaining power at a high rate. Taekyung felt a brief moment of frustration as he realized he was essentially being encouraged to take on a very specific, professional role, but he quickly pushed those thoughts aside. He told himself that he was willing to accept any reputation as long as it meant he could finally protect himself and achieve the strength he had always wanted. With a determined smirk, he navigated the skill menu and spent his hard-earned points to upgrade his swordsmanship skill all the way to level 3. He felt the change immediately and realized that he was finally a real hunter after years of waiting and enduring the teasing of others. He knew that the path he had chosen took a very long time to open up, but he was finally ready to fulfill his childhood dream. As a dark and confident expression settled on his face, he realized that he was no longer the weak person he used to be and was prepared to take on whatever challenges the system had in store for him. There is an old saying that to catch a tiger, one must venture directly into the tiger's den, and in this world, that meant heading straight for a professional hunter's guild. Taekyung understood that beyond random chance encounters on the street, the only way to advance his new career was to immerse himself in the center of hunter society. He knew there were 3 major organizations dominating the landscape, including the prestigious Silver and Jade Company, which functioned through strict direct contracts, and the Free Hunters Union, where independent freelancers operated on their own terms. There was also the mysterious Ariel Foundation, but since its inner workings were a total secret, Taekyung decided it was best to ignore that option entirely. His logic was simple because even though Silver and Jade was clearly the top choice, it was also the home base for Hun and her intense personality. He realized that if he joined her guild, she would likely find out about his awakening and might even try to keep him locked away for his own safety. He needed to hide his newfound abilities and his future plans from everyone he knew, especially since he felt a bit guilty about using his childhood friend as a test subject for his first points. With his hood pulled low and his identity concealed, he made his way to the Free Hunters Union building, while hoping that no rumors about his presence would start spreading among the local hunters. When he finally reached the registration desk, the clerk was so surprised to see a man applying that he actually had to pause and verify Taekyung's identity. It was incredibly rare for a male to register as an active hunter, but Taekyung kept his cool and provided a fake name to protect his true self from unwanted attention. He officially became Kim Sung-chul and walked away with a probationary license and instructions on which dungeon channels were currently open for exploration. As he moved through the lobby, he noticed several hunters nearby, but his system indicated that their management values were quite low compared to the jackpot he had found with Hyun. He felt a bit picky because he was not particularly attracted to anyone in the room, and he knew he needed to be genuinely invested to make the system work effectively. his attention was suddenly captured by a striking hunter, dressed as a witch who possessed a significantly higher point value of 50. He realized that although staring was probably rude, a mission of that size was definitely worth the risk of a little social awkwardness. The witch gave him a sharp glare before disappearing through a warp gate, which only made Taekyung more determined to test his luck in the field. He stepped onto the platform and felt a surge of energy as he was transported to a gloomy location known as the Dark Forest. This was his first time back in a dungeon since his school days, and he took a moment to draw his sword and prepare for whatever was lurking in the shadows. It did not take long for a group of rank D monsters to track him down by his scent, but Taekyung was surprised to find that he was no longer afraid. He was eager to see exactly how much his level 3 swordsmanship had changed his physical capabilities. When the creatures lunged at him, he delivered a single powerful swing and was absolutely stunned to see all three of them sliced apart instantly. The force of his attack felt like a high-rank skill, and he realized that the impact of his awakening was far greater than he had ever imagined. He even managed to take down a much larger monster with relative ease, though the effort left him feeling completely drained and physically exhausted. Meanwhile, in the luxury of the Silver and Jade headquarters, Hun was having a very different kind of day. She sat by a spa pool and looked quite miserable, while wondering why Taekyung was not answering her calls or responding to her messages. She began to worry that she had been too forward the previous night, or that her sudden display of affection had scared him away. Even when her colleagues invited her out for a drink, she turned them down because her mind was entirely focused on the boy she had left at home. She realized with a deep blush that her stress levels were already rising again, and she desperately wanted to see Taekyung. Little did she know, her favorite management partner was currently deep in the woods and was just about to have another encounter with the mysterious red-haired witch who seemed to be reaching the end of her own patience. The rain poured down over the dark forest as Taekyung stood amidst the remains of his hunt, feeling the weight of his new reality. He eventually returned to the Free Hunters Union to trade in his haul of magic stones, where the clerk at the counter could hardly believe a probationary hunter like Kim Sung-chul had managed such a feat alone. After the commission was settled, Taekyung walked away with 450,000 won, a sum that made him realize he could finally afford to live independently without being a burden to Huan and her mother. He reflected on how his awakening was proving to be far more effective than he ever imagined, though he knew he needed to be careful not to rely on a single source for his points. Seeking a new challenge, he set his sights on the grave of the old tree, where the system's map indicated a high-value target was located. He arrived just in time to witness the red-haired witch, a rank A hunter named Yuri, facing off against a massive rank B monster known as a Woodrello. Despite her high rank, Yuri was visibly struggling as her magic failed to manifest with any real power. She attempted to cast a wind spell, but instead of a devastating tornado, only a pathetic gust of air flickered from her staff. The giant tree monster took advantage of her weakness, lashing out with its vines and leaving her completely defenseless. Taekyung watched as the situation turned dire, realizing that her magic was being hindered by something far more personal than a lack of skill. Just as the monster was about to overwhelm her, he leaped from the shadows and snatched her away from the grasping vines, carrying her to safety in a move that was both heroic and slightly awkward. Yuri was immediately flustered and demanded to know what he was doing, accusing him of being a disgrace and a sneak for grabbing her so boldly. Taekyung simply stood his ground, noting that he had just risked his life to save her, while she was busy failing to cast a basic spell. As they retreated from the immediate danger, a system notification flashed before Taekyung's eyes, announcing an urgent quest. It explained that Yuri had lost her combat effectiveness because she had reached the absolute limit of her internal, emotional, and physical stress. The system suggested that providing her with intense cardio relief was the only way to restore her magic to its full potential, offering a massive reward of 100 awakening points. Taekyung realized he could not let this opportunity pass him by, even if the method of helping her was unconventional. He decided to confront her directly about the blockage in her power, asking her how long it had been since she had found any real balance or relief in her personal life. When she admitted it had been 2 months since she felt like herself, Taekyung explained that her pent-up energy was literally choking her magic flow. Yuri was mortified and wondered if he was part of some strange cult, but she couldn't deny the truth of his words. He reminded her that despite her grumbling, she had subtly leaned into his touch when he was carrying her, suggesting that her body was already craving the cardio management he was meant to provide. Yuri eventually collapsed to the ground, feeling like a lost cause and wondering aloud who would ever want to go out with a woman whose magic had become so unreliable. She looked up at Taekyung with tears in her eyes, appearing more vulnerable than any rank A hunter should ever be. Taekyung looked down at her with a calm and determined expression, stating clearly that he wanted to be the one to help her through this crisis. He stepped closer and told her that he intended to go through with the cardio management process right then and there, leaving Yuri stunned as she realized her journey back to power was about to take a very unexpected turn. Standing in the middle of the dim forest, Taekyung finally gathers his courage and makes his move by asking the high-ranking witch if she is ready to go through with his unique management session. Yuri is momentarily frozen in disbelief, looking up at him while wondering if he is actually being serious about helping her. She finds herself grabbing his hand as she tries to process the idea that this handsome stranger is truly offering to spend such personal time with her. Her face turns a bright shade of red as she wonders if this is some kind of elaborate trick or if her luck has suddenly changed for the better. Taekyung tries to maintain a calm and composed expression despite the sweat beads forming on his brow. He realizes that even though she is a powerful Ranka hunter, Yuri suffers from a surprising lack of self-confidence. He attempts to ease the tension by telling her that he finds her incredibly charming and wonders why she is so hard on herself. However, his attempt at being smooth backfires when Yuri becomes suspicious of his overly kind words. She points a finger at him and accuses him of being a member of a strange cult, claiming that his friendly laugh is far too suspicious for a normal person in a monster-filled dungeon. Feeling his patience reach its limit, Taekyung experiences a momentary lapse in his professional demeanor. He clutches his head in frustration and shouts out his very honest and very direct intention to help her find the cardio relief she needs. This sudden outburst leaves Yuri completely stunned, her eyes widening as she tries to comprehend his bluntness. Taekyung quickly realizes how embarrassing his shouting must have been and lowers his voice, asking her to please just trust him despite the awkwardness of the situation. As the evening light begins to fade, Yuri decides that she needs a bit of proof before she can fully commit to such an unusual request. She lets her guard down and challenges him to prove that he is truly excited by her presence. She wants to know for sure that his interest is genuine and not just part of some strange mission. Taekyung feels a wave of nerves, but remains determined to earn those valuable awakening points. The reality of the situation hits Yuri all at once as she realizes they are still standing in a public hunting ground. She begins to panic about the lack of privacy, wondering if they are really going to go through with this, right next to the path where anyone could walk by. Taekyung simply points out that they do not have many other options given their current location. She realizes that her journey toward restoring her magic is about to begin in the most unconventional way possible, right there in the middle of the dark forest. Taekyung lets out a long breath of relief as he realizes that the first round of his official management duties is finally complete. He looks down at his partner with a sense of pride, thinking to himself that the experience was quite remarkable for his first time in such a professional role. Lying on the soft forest floor, Yuri seems equally dazed, her breath slowly returning to normal as she processes the intense cardio session they just shared. The system notifications begin to chime in a rapid sequence, announcing that he has successfully acquired a massive haul of points. He feels a surge of excitement as he sees the breakdown of 60 basic points and a 20-point bonus, followed by a huge 100-point reward for completing the emergency task. With a total of 180 points added to his balance, Taekyung feels like his career is finally on the right track. The morning sun begins to filter through the canopy as Taekyung wakes up feeling completely exhausted, looking like a man who just finished the most intense cardio workout of his life. Yuri is already up and appears to be in high spirits as she prepares to test her restored magic. She focuses her energy and recites a spell to call upon the wind, but the resulting force is far more powerful than she anticipated. Instead of a simple breeze, a massive surge of energy erupts from her hands, creating a spectacle that leaves Taekyung wide-eyed and clutching his chest in shock. He watches as her magic literally clears the path ahead, realizing that his management techniques have unlocked a level of power in her that is almost terrifying. Amidst the swirling energy of her spell, a valuable green crystal, known as a Woodrello core, drops onto the grass right in front of them. Yuri picks up the high-quality material and insists that Taekyung take it as a token of her genuine gratitude. He is momentarily stunned because he knows the item is worth over 600,000 won, which is a significant amount of money for someone in his position. Yuri gently explains that he is the reason her magic has returned and tells him not to take the gift too seriously. Taekyung accepts the core while feeling a bit guilty, reminding himself that he did not provide the cardio relief just to get a financial reward, though the extra cash certainly helps his situation. Yuri looks at him with a soft and playful expression, suggesting that since she gave him a hard time earlier, she really wants to give him a proper cardio introduction as a better way to say thank you. As they lean in and share a sussy moment, Taekyung is surprised to see the point icons appearing over her head once again. He realizes that even small gestures of cardio connection are a goldmine for his awakening system. This realization makes him understand that he cannot let this be a simple one-night encounter because he put far too much effort into taming a high-ranking hunter to just let her walk away. He decides that he needs to ensure there is a next time if he wants to keep his point income steady and reliable. As the sun climbs higher, they decide it is time to leave the forest before other hunters arrive and start asking questions about their disheveled appearance. They make their way to a nearby luxury hotel where the atmosphere remains surprisingly good. However, Yuri becomes visibly flustered at the check-in desk, admitting with a blush that her credit card is currently not working. She feels embarrassed that she cannot pay for the room, despite being the woman in the relationship. Taekyung simply gives her a charming smile and tells her not to worry about it, stepping up to handle the bill with the confidence of a man who knows he is an essential part of her team. Once they reach their room, the playful tension between them shows no signs of fading. Taekyung is busy settling in when Yuri suggests that, since they are both quite messy from their time in the woods, they should just go ahead and wash up together to save time. Taekyung can only marvel at how easy it has become to manage the needs of such a powerful hunter. He follows her lead while realizing that his journey to becoming the strongest warrior is turning out to be a very comfortable and rewarding adventure. Taekyung starts the morning on a high note by offering a gentle pat to Yuri's head as she rests comfortably beside him. He realizes that his system is quite generous when it comes to simple cardio moments, rewarding him with another 50 points and a nice 10-point bonus just for being sweet. The bright morning sun eventually fills the room, and Taekyung finds himself waking up to the sight of a very refreshed-looking witch. Yuri admits that she has worked up quite an appetite because they were both far too busy with their intense cardio management sessions yesterday to even think about eating. Taekyung playfully suggests that they could squeeze in one more cardio round of refreshing morning exercise before hitting the breakfast buffet, but Yuri is momentarily shocked by his seemingly endless stamina. She insists that food must come first this time, which makes Taekyung realize that the once fierce rank A hunter is now much more manageable than he ever imagined. After they finish their meal and prepare to leave the hotel, Yuri looks at him with a heart full of gratitude. She explains that she is thankful not only for the return of her magic, but for the way he made her feel special as a woman. Taekyung knows a good business opportunity when he sees one and decides it is time to make their connection a bit more permanent. He asks for her phone and saves his number under his fake name, telling her to reach out whenever she feels her stress levels rising again. However, he decides to lean into his new role by telling her that he will never see her again if she ever seeks this kind of relief from another man. The thought of losing him sends Yuri into a total panic, and she immediately promises that such a thing would never happen. She clings to him with wide eyes and promises to be completely loyal, which confirms Taekyung's suspicion that she is actually quite a pushover for a confident and headstrong man. He walks away with a confident smirk, realizing he has finally secured a consistent and very high-value source of awakening points. He reflects on how much his life has changed and looks forward to the next step in his journey as a top-tier hunter-manager. Even though his methods are a bit unconventional, he is satisfied knowing that he has successfully turned a powerful rank A witch into a devoted, regular client. Taekyung wraps up his time with Yuri by offering a final word of trust, which earns him a tidy sum of 50 points and a small bonus. After parting ways and returning to the safety of his own room, he finally has a moment to settle down and assess his progress. He realizes that he is down to his last few points after his recent upgrades, but is pleasantly surprised to discover a massive 50% off sale currently running in the system shop. He sees that reaching the prestigious level 4 in swordsmanship is now a very realistic goal if he can just find a way to secure a little more energy from his partners. Just as he is contemplating his next move, a notification from Hoon pops up on his screen. She is curious about his evening plans, and he decides that a home-cooked meal is the perfect way to bring her over. He offers to make the same fried egg curry she enjoyed so much last time, and tells her she does not even need to bring any ingredients. Hyun is clearly thrilled by the invitation and promises to head over the very moment she finishes her duties at the guild. Taekyung smiles as he prepares his kitchen, realizing that his schedule is filling up much faster than he expected, and that he will have very little time to actually rest. It does not take long for the sound of the door lock to signal her arrival, and he finds Hoin standing there, looking remarkably enthusiastic. She seems to have rushed over with such incredible speed that she did not even take a moment to freshen up after her shift. As he stands there in his cooking apron, he notices that she is already flushed and breathing heavily, as if her internal stress levels have reached a new peak. He notes that she must have run the entire way, and she admits with a bashful look that she simply wanted to see him as soon as possible. Hyun becomes a bit self-conscious and worries that she might smell like sweat after a long day of hunting. But Taekyung ignores her protests and pulls her. He tells her that he finds her quite pleasant. He realizes that her body is being much more honest about its needs than her shy words are. He can feel the intensity of her cardio energy and jokingly points out that her other half seems to have a mind of its own, despite her attempt to act like she only came over for the food. They eventually try to settle down for the meal, but the atmosphere in the room remains incredibly thick with anticipation. Hyun finds it nearly impossible to focus on her plate and eventually confesses that she has been holding back her intense feelings the entire time they were eating. She tells him quite boldly that she cannot wait any longer and wants to skip the rest of the pleasantries to start their cardio management session right away. Taekyung tries to play the role of the responsible manager by suggesting they should probably let their food digest first, but he quickly sees that she is completely beyond the point of listening to logic. He looks into her determined eyes and realizes that since she is not willing to wait a single second longer, he has no choice but to give in to her demands and get back to work. After another legendary cardio management marathon, Hyun is completely out for the count, having experienced a level of cardio relief she never knew existed. Taekyung wakes up as the morning light fills his room, realizing that his partner was so overwhelmed by the session that she actually passed out. The system chime confirms a successful haul of 70 points plus a 10-point bonus, but as he steps into the shower, he starts to notice a problematic trend. His entire body feels incredibly sore from working without rest, and he is disappointed to see that he earned far fewer points than he expected. He realizes that his management efficiency is plummeting because he has been focusing all his energy on the same person for too long. He understands that if he wants to maximize his gains, he needs to broaden his horizons and find new hunters who are struggling with their internal stress. Feeling like his stamina has hit its absolute limit, he decides to spend the rest of the day resting at home and plans to visit the guild the following morning once his body recovers. When the next day arrives, Taekyung is shocked to find himself feeling perfectly fine and energized despite 3 straight days of intense cardio activity. He realizes that his level 3 swordsmanship skill has been secretly strengthening his physique and enhancing his endurance to an incredible degree. He checks his point balance and sees he only has 55 points left, which is nowhere near the amount needed for the next swordsmanship upgrade. He considers picking up some basic fire or thunder magic instead, knowing that since he operates as a solo hunter to hide his awakening, he needs a versatile set of skills to stay safe. He eventually decides to put the skill purchases aside for a moment and heads out into the city at 6 in the morning. Even with his boosted condition, he finds the early hour to be quite hardcore as he wanders through the empty streets. The eerie silence gives him a suspicious vibe, and he half expects to be ambushed by a highly motivated and starving female hunter at any second. His intuition proves to be correct when he suddenly spots a striking blonde woman walking down the sidewalk with her morning coffee. Floating right above her head is a massive 100-point icon, a value so high it makes his heart nearly stop in his chest. He tells himself that he is not the type of person to get excited just by looking at numbers, but a jackpot like this is simply impossible to ignore. He recalls that even the powerful Hyun only started with an 80, which leads him to the internal realization that this woman must be a total monster when it comes to unfulfilled desires. He decides that as a professional manager, he simply cannot help himself and must step in to provide the assistance she clearly needs. Taekyung stands in the middle of the quiet city street and observes the striking blonde woman, while marveling at the giant numerical value floating above her head. He realizes that since his childhood friend was only an 80, this newcomer must be an absolute jackpot for his point collection. He notices a shimmering golden token hanging from her belongings and identifies it as a symbol of the prestigious aerial altar, which is a place reserved for the most elite members of society. Even though he knows engaging with someone that powerful involves a massive amount of risk, he tells himself that a professional manager simply cannot turn away from such a high-value opportunity. The following day at the Hunters' Autonomous Union, Taekyung is surprised to find that his recent solo performances in the forest have earned him an immediate promotion to C rank. He observes the office staff and realizes that his new, unidentifiable mask is doing some serious heavy lifting, because they seem to judge him as a standard hunter rather than a rare male hunter. He accepts his new identification tag while reflecting on how he has climbed to this rank in just a single week. His eyes settle on the mission board for B-rank dungeons, and he finds his thoughts drifting toward the abandoned city where his life first took a tragic turn. He recalls the day his parents were taken from him, and how Hyun's mother was the one who finally put an end to the monster responsible. He understands that hunting the remaining creatures in that city will not technically count as revenge, but he feels an internal need to face the location as a big person. He soon finds himself walking through the desolate ruins of the city while reflecting on how much smaller and more manageable things should feel now that he has grown up. However, his calm is interrupted when a massive horned lizard emerges from the rubble, and he realizes that the scale of these creatures is still quite intimidating. Taekyung lunges into the fray and experiences the raw power of his level 3 swordsmanship as he delivers a series of heavy strikes. He takes a direct hit that sends him skidding across the pavement, but he is pleased to find that his strengthened physique allows him to stand right back up without much trouble. He decides that the situation calls for something more than just a blade and unleashes his newly purchased fire arrow magic. He watches as a barrage of flaming projectiles rains down on the monster and realizes that he is no longer limited to just being a swordsman. Amidst the smoke and debris of the battle, he hears a sudden cry for help and spots a woman being tossed through the air by the creature's tail. He moves with a level of speed that surprises even himself and catches her mid-air in a heroic rescue. He is stunned to realize that the woman he just saved is the exact same blonde target he saw in the city with the 100-point value. As he holds her in a protective carry, he notes that she is remarkably calm and seems to be the first person he has managed who did not immediately lash out at him. He tells her to stay low as the monster prepares for another lunge, realizing that his journey to becoming the ultimate hunter has just brought him face to face with his most valuable client yet. The battle in the abandoned city reaches a frantic peak as the massive horned lizard lunges forward with terrifying speed. Taekyung keeps a firm grip on the blonde hunter as they narrowly avoid a lethal strike, but the woman is far from grateful for the rescue. She immediately takes charge by pointing out that the monster has a clear weakness in its eyes and orders him to run straight toward its face. Taekyung finds her arrogance quite impressive for someone who was just flying through the air a moment ago, but he decides that working together is his best shot at taking the beast down. As he carries her into position, she manifests a glowing mana bow and prepares a powerful shot. The energy crackles with intensity, but when she finally releases the arrow, it streaks past the monster and strikes the pavement harmlessly. Taekyung is genuinely baffled that she managed to miss from such a close distance and lets his frustration show. Shahi immediately turns the blame back on him, claiming that the only reason her aim was off was because he was not holding her with enough stability. Taekyung wonders how she can possibly blame him for her own lack of accuracy, especially while he is the one doing all the heavy lifting. The monster does not give them time to argue as it unleashes a devastating breath of fire that turns the street into an inferno. The force of the blast sends Taekyung skidding across the ground, and he realizes that focusing on his partner's complaining is making it impossible to stay sharp. Meanwhile, he gathers her strength and leaps high into the air with a level of agility that seems impossible for someone in her state. She draws her bow once more and pours every ounce of her remaining mana into a single, vertical strike. The resulting beam of light pierces through the monster with incredible power, finally ending the struggle in a cloud of dust and debris. As she falls back toward the earth, she looks down at Taekyung and expects him to catch her in a heroic embrace. He obliges by stepping forward and grabbing her midair, but the moment is far from being there. He decides she is being far too bothersome and lets her drop to the hard ground with a dull thud. Shahi is absolutely mortified by his lack of manners and cries out in pain, wondering why he could not have let her down gently. Taekyung ignores her complaints entirely, finding it much more rewarding to loot the high-value green crystal core from the remains of the monster. He marvels at the size of the prize and tells himself that he certainly will not be giving it back. He eventually picks herself up and starts grumbling about how amazing A-rank hunters are supposed to be, but Taekyung is quick to remind her that she was the one getting beaten up by a B-rank creature. He introduces himself using his fake name, Kim Sung-chul, and watches as she tries to regain her dignity. She admits her name and claims she is a B-rank hunter on the verge of a promotion, which she believes basically makes her an A-rank. Taekyung finds her logic hilarious and continues to tease her about how easily she was overwhelmed. Their bickering is interrupted by a sudden chime from the system, announcing a new urgent mission. The interface explains that Shahi has been unable to perform at her peak because of a massive buildup of internal tension and needs. The reward for helping her find relief is a staggering 200 points, a value so high it makes Taekyung's head spin. He realizes that despite her ties to the prestigious aerial altar, he cannot let such a massive jackpot walk away. He stops her from leaving and suggests they form a party, knowing that being alone in a dungeon is dangerous. She is immediately suspicious and wonders if he is implying that she is too weak to handle things on her own. Taekyung tries to maintain his composure while dealing with her difficult personality, realizing she might have a problem with her hearing as well as her attitude. He decides to get straight to the point and tells her that he knows exactly why she has been struggling lately. Shahi is skeptical, noting that even the best doctors at the altar could not find anything wrong with her. She dares him to explain his nonsense, and Taekyung obliges by telling her that her energy is being blocked by a very specific and intense desire that has not been fulfilled. He watches as she realizes he is talking about her private cardio frustrations, and her face turns a deep shade of crimson. She tries to argue that everyone has those kinds of feelings, and that it should not affect her combat form so much. Taekyung remains calm and explains that the problem is not having the feelings, but rather how she chooses to relieve them. He notes that she clearly has not found a way to find balance, which is why she cannot sleep at night. She is stunned by his accuracy and eventually lets her guard down, admitting that she has been looking for someone with a beast-like strength who could handle her forcefully. She is immediately embarrassed by her own honesty and tries to tell him to shut up. Sensing that the time for games is over, Taekyung reaches up and removes his mask, revealing his true face to her for the first time. He is completely frozen in shock, realizing that the hunter she had been arguing with is actually an incredibly handsome man. Taekyung gives her a confident smile and asks if he is the person she has been looking for all along. He tells her to stop babbling and prepare herself for the cardio management session she clearly needs. As the realization of his true identity sinks in, she finds herself unable to look away, realizing that her journey back to her peak form is about to begin in the most intense way possible. Taekyung stands amidst the crumbling ruins and decides that there is no better time than the present to begin his official management of the high-ranking hunter. He reflects on how she had been longing for someone with a dominant and powerful presence to take charge of her situation and realizes that he is perfectly suited for the role. The system indicates that she is currently overwhelmed by a massive buildup of internal tension, which has left her in a surprisingly sussy state despite her prestigious background. As the wind whistles through the abandoned outskirts of the city, he begins to have second thoughts and tries to convince him to wait. She suggests that they should at least find a more appropriate location, like a luxury hotel, and attempts to use her status as a wealthy heiress of the Dokyung group to regain some control over the situation. Taekyung remains completely unimpressed by her family name and tells himself that he is only being so assertive because the urgent mission clock is ticking down. He remembers her earlier confession about wanting to be handled by someone with a beast-like nature and decides that it is time to stop being polite and start giving her exactly what she asked for. He reaches out and catches her with a firm grip that leaves no room for further argument. Shahi begins to panic about the lack of privacy and worries aloud that behaving like animals in the middle of a public street is beneath their dignity as hunters. Taekyung ignores her complaints and leans in that she can feel the intensity of his gaze, while he reminds her that her previous words suggested she wanted a cardio partner who was not afraid to be rough. She is completely flustered and tells him to be quiet, yet her racing heart betrays how much she is actually enjoying the attention. The tension in the air becomes almost tangible as Taekyung tells her to stay perfectly still and lower her voice unless she wants to attract every monster in the surrounding area. He warns her that if she continues to be difficult, he will simply have to remove her obstacles by force, which makes she realize that she is no longer the one in charge of this encounter. She tries to clarify that she wanted to be handled by a man who acted like a beast rather than someone who was becoming an actual beast right in front of her. Taekyung is finished with the talking and tells her that she can either cooperate or face the possibility of a very long and sussy walk back to the city. She is visibly trembling and asks for just a single moment to steady her nerves and prepare her heart for what is about to happen. Taekyung watches her with a calm and determined expression, noting that even a powerful hunter from the aerial altar has a limit to how much stress she can carry alone. The system chime brings absolute music to his ears as a massive haul of 385 points flashes across his screen. The marathon of intense cardio management in the ruins finally comes to an end, leaving the two of them sitting on a quiet bench under the evening sky. Taekyung reflects on the sheer intensity of their encounter and notes that even the local wildlife would be surprised by the level of energy they just expended. While Taekyung looks like a man who has had his entire soul drained out of his body, he sits beside him, looking completely revitalized, with a literal glow of health surrounding her. She grumbles about her legs feeling like jelly, but the positive icons floating around her head prove that she has never felt better in her life. Taekyung checks his total balance and feels a surge of pride seeing that he has reached a clean 400 points. He realizes that all his hesitation was for nothing, and he is incredibly glad that he decided to go for the gold. He takes a moment to observe while she rests and acknowledges that his success this time was largely due to her very specific and forceful preferences. Something feels remarkably different when she is quiet and peaceful because it is a sharp contrast to her usual arrogant and loud personality. Once she fully recovers, she bounces to her feet with a roar of excitement and admits that she honestly thought he was just babbling nonsense earlier. Taekyung can only wonder to himself why she would ever agree to such an unconventional session if she didn't believe in his methods from the start. Later that night, Taekyung finds himself sitting alone in a dark park while the cool air helps him settle his thoughts. He is profoundly exhausted, but the sense of accomplishment is unlike anything he felt during his years of being treated like a weak prize. He holds up his hands and contemplates the reality of his work while reflecting on the soft and squishy textures that have become his new professional standard. He realizes that he must be careful during his next encounter with Hyun because he needs to maintain his stamina for the long haul. Just as he is beginning to relax, his phone buzzes in his pocket with a new notification that sends a spark of excitement through him. He looks down to see a message from Yuri, who is already asking if he has any free time tomorrow. It seems his reputation is growing quickly, and his schedule is filling up with high-ranking clients faster than he ever could have imagined. Taekyung finds himself back in the quiet shadows of the dark forest, a place that now holds a very specific and vivid set of memories. He stands among the familiar trees and reflects on the fact that this was the official birthplace of his professional management career, where he first helped Yuri find her balance. He checks his system map and realizes that his target is already nearby, sporting a very healthy value of 50 points that makes his walk through the woods feel like a stroll toward a guaranteed jackpot. He moves silently through the misty air and eventually spots a familiar figure in a dark dress, looking around with a mixture of nervous anticipation and impatience. Taekyung decides to skip the formal greetings and sneaks up behind her to deliver a surprise hug that catches her completely off guard. Even without turning around to see his face, Yuri feels the familiar warmth of his presence and realizes exactly who has found her in the dark. She admits, with a bit of a pout, that she actually arrived early, specifically to hide and surprise him, but she feels a bit frustrated that he managed to turn the tables on her so easily. Taekyung simply smiles and notes that she looks much cuter when she is the one being teased, rather than the one trying to play a joke. He watches her face turn a deep shade of red and finds her reaction to be quite charming for a powerful rank, a hunter who is usually so composed. He decides that they have done enough talking and moves in to begin her much-needed cardio session right there in the woods. As his hands find their mark, Yuri finds the feelings to be a mixture of being ticklish and completely overwhelming. She tries to maintain a little bit of her dignity by calling him arrogant for being so bold with someone who is technically his senior, but her racing heart and happy expression clearly disagree with her grumpy words. Taekyung decided to push his luck even further by mentioning the heart-shaped mole he discovered during their very first cardio encounter. Yuri is absolutely mortified that he noticed such a specific detail, wondering aloud when he could have possibly seen something so hidden. He playfully suggests that he might have stumbled upon the information while browsing his management app, but his sissy look suggests he is quite eager to verify the information in person again today. Yuri warns him with a sharp glare that he will face a very serious scolding if he ever tells another soul about her personal secrets. Taekyung just laughs and points out that since he is the one enjoying her company, there is absolutely no reason for him to be the one losing out in this situation. He pulls her firmly against him and realizes that her internal tension has reached a point where she can no longer hide how much she has been looking forward to this meeting. Yuri eventually lets her guard down and confesses that the memory of their first cardio encounter after the monster hunt has been playing in her mind like a vivid and impactful dream. She admits that the experience was so powerful that she simply could not stop thinking about it and wonders if they should find a more appropriate place. Taekyung notes that the forest holds very good memories for both of them and suggests that he might be persuaded to stay if a certain woman gave him a proper and enthusiastic greeting. Yuri decides that she has had enough of his teasing, realizing that her desire for cardio balance is far more important than her pride as a high-ranking witch. She promises to make him feel just as good as he makes her feel, and begins to lead the way into an intense outdoor cardio marathon. As the sounds of the forest fade into the background, Taekyung settles into his work and realizes that his journey as a top-tier hunter-manager is becoming more rewarding with every session he provides. Taekyung looks at Yuri and cannot help but think she is incredibly cute in her current state. He realizes that she can feel his heart pounding against her, and she wonders if he felt this same level of excitement during their very first cardio encounter. Taekyung is internally screaming with joy because she is being so bold and clearly wants to take the lead during their intense cardio session. He finds her enthusiastic vibe to be quite overwhelming and realizes that having this kind of meeting in a dungeon is actually quite risky. He tells her that they really should plan things better in the future because being so distracted in a monster-filled area can be dangerous. Yuri looks a bit bashful and offers a sincere apology while explaining that she was just so focused on the excitement of seeing him again that she forgot about their surroundings. Taekyung finds her honest reaction very sweet and tells her that he is actually quite proud of her for being so open about her feelings. Yuri decides to stop apologizing and instead offers him a special reward for being such a supportive partner. As the session continues, Taekyung cannot help but comment on how pretty and charming she looks, which makes Yuri quite flustered. She tells him to stop being so smooth with his words, especially while he is supposed to be focusing on her needs. Taekyung is highly amused by her attempts to act scary and dominant because he thinks she has the terrifying presence of a very small and determined hamster. He decides to humor her by pretending to be a little bit scared just to boost her confidence as an older woman. Yuri wants to prove that she is more than just a sweet face and decides to use her rank A magic for something practical. She unleashes a windcutter spell that quickly carves out a makeshift bed from the surrounding stones and covers it in soft leaves. She proudly presents her stone mattress and tells him that he does not have to worry about the muddy ground anymore. Taekyung is genuinely impressed by her creativity and finds the new arrangement to be surprisingly comfortable once he sits down. Yuri is pleased with the success of her magic and reflects on how much she has practiced just to make sure their meetings are perfect. She decides it is time to resume their cardio management exactly where they left off and prepares herself for the next round of exercise. Taekyung looks at her flushed face and realizes that, despite her attempt to act like a mature and capable hunter, she actually seems more nervous right now than she was during their very first time. Together, he settles in to continue his work and realizes that managing the cardio needs of such a powerful witch is a job that never gets boring. Taekyung and Yuri rest together on the stone mattress while the cool forest air helps them recover from their marathon cardio session. Yuri looks up at him with a worried expression and wonders if he is actually angry with her for being so intense. Taekyung finds the idea hilarious and points out that he has no reason to be mad, since he was the one in charge of the situation the entire time. He playfully reminds her that all he can remember is her getting overwhelmed and crying from the sheer intensity of the workout. Yuri pouts like a small child and calls him a dummy, but her expression softens when he gives her a gentle and comforting head pat. They eventually make their way to a nearby vending machine to find some much-needed refreshment. Taekyung grabs a cold soda and drinks it down in a single gulp, while reflecting on the fact that nothing beats a sugary drink after such a long period of exercise. Yuri watches him with a mixture of amusement and curiosity, noting that he sounds a bit like an old man when he sighs with satisfaction. However, she admits that his rugged and satisfied vibe makes him look remarkably mature and charming. As they stand by the glowing machine, Taekyung decides to make some casual conversation about her professional life. He asks about where she spends her time when she is not hunting in the woods, and Yuri reveals that she is a prominent member of the Silver and Jade Guild. This information causes Taekyung's heart to skip a beat because he realizes she belongs to the exact same organization as his childhood friend Hoen. He had been trying so hard to keep his various management sessions separate, but the world of high-ranking hunters is proving to be much smaller than he anticipated. His imagination immediately takes a dark and hilarious turn as he visualizes a terrifying version of Hun emerging from the shadows. In his mind, his childhood friend appears like a giant vengeful demon with a smile that is far more frightening than any monster he has ever faced. He imagines her discovering his secret meetings in the forest and becoming so consumed by jealousy that she offers to live with him forever after removing his ability to ever visit another woman again. This mental nightmare makes him realize that he is currently walking on a very thin tightrope and that one wrong move could lead to a very permanent and painful retirement. He quickly shakes off the scary thoughts and realizes that Yuri's high status is actually a golden opportunity for his own career. He turns toward her with a very serious and confident expression while taking her chin in his hand to capture her full attention. Yuri is momentarily stunned by his sudden shift in demeanor and waits with bated breath to hear what he has to say. Taekyung knows that he cannot stay a probationary hunter forever and decides to ask her for a professional favor. He tells her that he wants her to write him an official recommendation letter, realizing that the endorsement of a rank A witch is exactly what he needs to climb the social ladder and finally achieve the power he has always wanted. Yuri is flustered by the request, but eventually agrees, telling him to just follow her lead while acting like a responsible and confident older sister. The next morning arrives far too quickly, and Taekyung finds himself staring at his phone with a heavy dose of regret. He looks like a man who has been through a spiritual and physical blender, wondering if it is even possible for it to be morning already. Despite feeling completely drained, he eventually drags himself out of bed and heads toward the city center. He knows that if he wants to continue his career as a professional manager and hunter, he needs to secure a better rank to keep up with the demands of his increasingly powerful clients. He arrives at the Hunters Autonomous Union and is surprised to find that his new, unidentifiable mask is actually working a bit too well. The receptionist immediately recognizes him as the rising star, Kim Seong-chol, and greets him with an enthusiastic smile that borders on being a total fangirl. She tells him that his performance lately has been legendary and suggests that he is already eligible for a special promotion to B rank. She, coincidentally, has the perfect request ready for him, which involves a gloomy location known as the Tar Pit. Taekyung enters the dungeon and finds it to be a damp and eerie place filled with notorious creatures known as black slimes. These monsters are famous for hiding in the shadows and ambushing unsuspecting hunters, which makes the mission much more dangerous than his previous encounters. He realizes that while his body is getting stronger, he still lacks the battlefield experience to handle these hidden threats effectively. He decides to check his system app for guidance and is surprised when a loading screen appears right in front of his eyes. A calm and professional voice suddenly fills his mind, introducing itself as a high-functioning artificial intelligence named SI. The system explains that it is now acting as his competent secretary and can process information either through his spoken words or his direct thoughts. Taekyung is absolutely thrilled when SI performs a quick scan of the area and reveals that there are exactly 21 black slimes hiding in the walls ahead. He feels like he is officially cheating at life because knowing exactly where the bugs are hiding makes the hunt remarkably easy. He flexes his muscles and prepares to show these cowards that they picked the wrong hunter to ambush. Meanwhile, in a very different part of the city, a striking blonde woman with pointed ears sits in the middle of a smoky room at the Hotsuga pharmacy. She looks incredibly stressed and frustrated as she exhales a cloud of smoke while complaining about the terrible quality of her current materials. She is a specialized pharmacist named Choi Ha-young, and she is currently losing her mind because the latest batch of slime material tastes like absolute trash. She is so angry that she considers suing her suppliers, but her mood shifts instantly when her phone rings with some very exciting news. She rushes to the Hunters Autonomous Union with a level of desperation that catches the staff completely off guard. She slams her hands on the counter and demands to see the new batch of black slime material right away. She is so frantic that she starts throwing her ID, her certificates, and even a massive tip at the clerk just to speed up the process. When she finally sees the high-quality cores Taekyung harvested, she looks like she has found a literal treasure. She grabs one and runs out the door before the poor receptionist can even finish the transaction. Back on the street, Ha-young takes a deep breath and prepares to test the new material. As she experiences the incredible purity of the black slime, her entire body seems to relax and she is filled with a sense of pure, glowing bliss. She realizes that whoever provided these cores is an absolute genius, and she finds herself wanting to give that mysterious hunter a very deep and thankful reward. She feels revitalized and happy, realizing that her professional crisis has finally come to an end thanks to a total stranger. Taekyung is walking home through the evening streets and feeling the weight of a very long day. He reflects on the fact that there are truly no easy jobs in this world, even for someone with a high-functioning AI in his head. Just as he is beginning to relax, his phone buzzes with a call from a number he does not recognize. He looks up and spots a woman waving at him from a cafe balcony with an incredibly playful and welcoming smile. She calls out to him with a very motherly and sussy greeting, telling him that his mom is right here. Taekyung can only stare in disbelief, realizing that his schedule is about to get even more complicated with yet another high-value target entering the scene. The evening air took a turn for the bazaar when a disheveled but striking woman called out from a nearby table, wondering why a handsome young man was wandering around alone at such a dangerous hour. Taekyung stopped in his tracks as she insisted he come sit right beside his mom, a request that left him sweating and deeply confused. He observed her state of total intoxication and noted that a woman really shouldn't be drinking that much when she was all by herself. However, the woman quickly corrected him by stating that he should be calling her mom rather than mother, even as she teased him with the idea of being his mother-in-law instead. Taekyung looked at her and felt a wave of awkwardness, realizing that this was Kang-eun, the mother of his childhood friend, Hoon. He recalled how she had essentially raised him after he lost his parents, often treating him and her daughter to treats and acting as their primary guardian. When she brought up the fact that he and her daughter had been getting quite close lately, Taekyung felt a flash of guilt as he remembered his recent intense cardio sessions with Hoon. He realized that it was impossible to deny the relationship, so he decided the best course of action was to simply offer to walk her home. The journey was far from quiet as the older woman clung to his arm, happily chattering away about how much she liked being called mom and marveling at how tall and good-looking he had become. Taekyung felt a bit overwhelmed by her sussy closeness, especially when he realized she was leaning into him with a surprising amount of enthusiasm. However, her playful mood vanished in a heartbeat, replaced by a somber and tearful expression as she warned him that he must never become a hunter. She gripped him tightly and begged him to listen to her, revealing the deep-seated fear she carried for his safety. Taekyung looked down at her with a mixture of pity and resolve, remembering that she was once a legendary hunter herself. He felt a deep sense of sympathy for the burdens she had carried alone for 20 years, but he knew he could not give up on his own dreams of strength now. When they finally reached the apartment, a very embarrassed Hein answered the door and quickly took charge of her mother, scolding her for drinking so much while thanking Taekyung for his help. Taekyung watched them go inside, feeling like his work was finally finished for the night. Just as he turned to leave, a digital notification flared to life in his vision, announcing a sudden quest of massive proportions. The system explained that the S-rank hunter Kang-eun had been mourning her late husband for 2 decades and desperately needed someone to provide a reason for her to keep living. The reward was a staggering 300 transcended points, but the requirement involved managing her most deep-seated cardio needs. Taekyung stared at the screen in disbelief, finding the timing of the quest to be incredibly problematic given their history. Back in the quiet of his room the next morning, Taekyung sat on his bed, feeling a profound sense of skepticism regarding his own abilities. He wondered if the system was really expecting him to share such personal vitality with someone who was basically a second mother to him. He called out to his AI secretary, SI, and admitted that even if the reward made him the strongest person on Earth, he didn't want to become a terrible child to a woman he respected so much. SI responded in its usual calm tone, explaining that while it didn't care about his personal choices, it strongly recommended fulfilling the mission. The system attempted to explain the deeper logic behind these quests, though much of the technical information remained censored behind filters. Taekyung expressed his frustration at the high-functioning junk in his head, but he eventually agreed to listen to whatever information was available. SI asked him to recall all the previous times he had been given sudden missions, and noted that those encounters often saved the lives of the hunters involved. Taekyung thought back to his meetings with Yuri and Shahi, remembering how defensive they were at first, and how they eventually lost their will to resist his management. A heavy realization settled over him as he understood that those powerful women were actually struggling with such intense internal cardio stress that they were on the verge of losing their spark. He realized that the system wasn't just giving him points for the sake of it, but was identifying people who were secretly at their absolute limit. He looked at a picture of Hyun's mother and felt his resolve begin to shift, acknowledging that she might truly be in need of the unique relief only he could provide. Despite the awkwardness, he decided he had to figure out her true feelings before making a final choice. The next day, Taekyung found himself standing in front of Hyun's door, feeling so nervous that he thought he might actually get sick. He took a deep breath and rang the bell, finding that Hyun had already left for work. Her mother answered the intercom with a groggy voice, and Taekyung nervously asked if he could come in for a bit. He told himself there was nothing to be afraid of, and that he was just there to check on her health after her heavy drinking session. When she opened the door, Yoon greeted him with a bright and happy smile, appearing to be in much better spirits than the previous night. She invited him in for tea and admitted she was feeling a bit bored, but Taekyung remained focused on the task at hand. He noted that she had clearly consumed a lot of alcohol, and she seemed genuinely surprised that he knew about her condition. Taekyung explained that he was the one who walked her home, realizing with a bit of relief that she didn't remember a single thing from their encounter. She became quite flustered at the thought of her own behavior and asked if she had said anything weird while she was drunk. Taekyung took a bold step forward and leaned in, capturing her full attention as he told her she hadn't said much at all. He looked directly into her eyes and mentioned that she had simply commented on how much he looked like Hyun's father. He called her mother with a very serious tone and asked her if she truly saw him as a son or if there was something sussy she felt when she looked at him up close. He watched as her face turned a deep shade of red, realizing that the first step of his most difficult management mission was officially underway. The atmosphere in the kitchen becomes incredibly thick with tension as Eun finds herself unable to look away, her face turning a bright shade of crimson, while she wonders aloud what she could possibly think of the young man standing so near to her. She tries to regain her composure by flashing a nervous smile and insisting that she obviously views him as a precious and trustworthy son, but her racing heart and flustered expression suggests that her feelings are becoming far more complicated. Taekyung observes her reaction and decides to dig a little deeper into her past by asking what kind of man her late husband actually was. Yoon reflects for a moment and describes the father of her child as a very ordinary person, though she admits he had a bit of a quirky habit when it came to showing off his physical strength and muscles. Sensing a golden opportunity, Taekyung gives her a confident look and mentions that he has also been working quite hard on his physique lately. He catches her hand and guides it directly to his chest, telling her to feel the results of his training for herself to see if he measures up. Eun is completely stunned by the boldness of the move and finds herself acknowledging how firm and impressive he feels, yet she is internally screaming at herself for having such sussy thoughts about a man she essentially raised. Her internal alarms reach a breaking point as Taekyung leans in, suggesting that if he continues to make these kinds of jokes, she might start to misunderstand his true intentions. This final push proves to be a bit too much for the S-rank hunter, and she suddenly shoves him back with a burst of energy while declaring that they absolutely cannot behave this way. Taekyung finds himself sprawled on the sofa, realizing that he might have been a bit too rash in his attempt to jumpstart their cardio management session. Eun stands over him and tells him that even for a joke, he has gone far too cold and really needs to be taught a lesson for his behavior. However, Taekyung expertly shifts the vibe by lowering his head and offering a quiet apology, claiming that he only acted that way because he wanted to find a way to cheer her up and help her find a reason to be happy again. This display of sincerity hits her like a physical force, and all her anger instantly melts away into a deep sense of guilt for being so harsh. she softens her expression and pulls him, telling him that she was just surprised and that there is no reason for him to make such a sad face. Taekyung settles in, while Eun reflects on how he used to be so small and snug in her arms when he was younger. He whispers a final word about wanting her to be happy before making a quick exit, promising to be back soon. Left alone on her couch, Eun is a total emotional wreck, burying her face in her hands while wondering what on earth is happening to her heart. She feels like she is officially losing her mind because she cannot stop thinking about the intense connection she just felt with her daughter's childhood friend. Meanwhile, Taekyung is back in his own room, rolling around under his blankets while grumbling at his AI secretary about how exhausting it is to flirt with a woman who has taken care of him for so long. SI offers a blunt reminder that since they are not actually related by blood, there is no logical problem with the situation, even if Taekyung thinks the tin can in his head is being a bit insensitive. The system reports that her embarrassment stat was quite high and reactive, confirming that his first attempt at management was actually a massive success. As he settles down for the night, the scene shifts to the local guild where Hyun is finishing a long day of work with her colleagues. She receives a sweet message from Taekyung and instantly lights up with a radiant glow of happiness that her friends find impossible to ignore. They begin to tease her about whether she has finally secured a partner, unaware that the boy she is so excited about is currently navigating an incredibly complicated and high-value mission involving her own mother. Back at the guild, the atmosphere was thick with a strange, competitive energy as Hun tried to play it cool with her colleagues. She insisted that Taekyung was just a childhood friend who felt like family, all while secretly planning to be with him forever and drop the friend title as soon as possible. Nearby, Yuri was having her own moment of internal celebration, blushing as she mentioned she had been looking after a younger friend lately. It was a classic case of two hunters being completely unaware that they were actually sharing the same personal manager, both convinced that they were the only ones receiving his special attention. The lighthearted mood shifted entirely when the scene moved back to Taekyung's home. The front door opened and Hyun arrived with a cheerful greeting, only to find Taekyung waiting for her in a state of absolute seriousness. He was kneeling on the floor with a grim expression that made Hyun's heart drop, causing her to wonder what could have possibly happened to make him look so desperate. She rushed to his side with concern, but Taekyung remained quiet for a moment while he gathered the courage to deliver the most awkward news of his life. He finally broke the silence by telling her to listen very carefully, because what he was about to say would be incredibly shocking. He looked her in the eye and confessed that he needed to establish a very sussy connection with her mother. Hyun's brain seemed to short-circuit instantly as she tried to process whether he was making some kind of bizarre joke. She stared at him in total disbelief, wondering why on earth he would say something so sussy about the woman who had helped raise him. Taekyung realized that words alone wouldn't be enough to explain the madness of his situation. He decided to reveal the truth about his awakening, explaining that he had transcended into a unique role where he gained strength through intense personal interactions with powerful hunters. To prove he wasn't just talking nonsense, he held out his hand and manifested a glowing orb of fire right before her eyes. Hyun watched the flames dance and realized that her weak childhood friend had actually become a real hunter with incredible potential. Even with the proof of his magic, Hyun struggled to understand why her mother had to be involved. She noted that the world was full of other hunters he could manage, and reminded him how highly her mother thought of him as a son. Taekyung explained the mechanics of his system's sudden requests, noting that these missions only appeared when a target's life was in genuine danger. This revelation hit Hyun like a physical blow, as she couldn't imagine how her retired mother sitting at home could possibly be facing a life-threatening crisis. Taekyung admitted that he didn't have all the answers, but he knew the system didn't make mistakes about these things. Hyun felt a wave of protective instinct wash over her and immediately stood up, declaring that she would help him convince her mother, even if she had to bring all her hunting equipment along. Taekyung had to step in as the voice of reason, urging her to calm down and pointing out that they still had time. He warned her that trying to force such a delicate situation would only end up hurting her mother more in the long run. As they sat together and the tension began to simmer down, a small doubt began to crawl into Hyun's mind. She looked down at her feet and quietly asked if his very first session with her had only happened because of a quest. Taekyung gave her a soft and sincere look, admitting that back then, he didn't even know quests existed. He told her quite clearly that he had initiated that first encounter simply because he wanted her to be his first choice above everyone else. This honest confession was exactly what Hun needed to hear to mend her heart. She looked at him with a tender smile and decided that if he was going to be spending such cardio time with her mother, she needed to mark him properly first. She leaned in with a playful yet determined look, telling him exactly how much she adored him while making sure he wouldn't forget who his primary partner was. Taekyung could only sigh contentedly as his schedule became even more packed, hoping that this extra bit of cardio would keep his favorite ally happy while he prepared for his most difficult mission yet. Taekyung and Hyune spend a quiet moment together as the weight of the upcoming mission hangs in the air. When she notices his distant gaze and wonders what is on his mind, he admits that he is simply thinking about her mother. Instead of being upset, Hyun shows her total support by telling him that everything will be fine as long as he is the one handling the situation. She even offers to help in any way she can, realizing that her childhood friend has a very unique and important job to do. Taekyung feels a renewed sense of determination as he contemplates the challenges of the mission ahead and vows to succeed for everyone's sake. The next morning, the two of them share a light breakfast while discussing the best way to approach the situation. They agree on a few specific conditions to ensure everything goes smoothly, and Hyun suggests that they should spend the next day apart to give him the space he needs. Although she looks a bit sad about the temporary separation, she manages to give him an encouraging smile and wishes him the best of luck with his visit. The following day, Taekyung arrives at the familiar front door of his childhood friend's home. He notices that he feels remarkably calm, perhaps because of the honest conversation he had with Hyun the day before. He knows exactly where the emergency key is hidden under a nearby bucket and uses it to let himself inside. He has a very specific plan in mind and is ready to put his management skills to the test. As he steps into the house, he finds Eun in the kitchen, already busy with her own morning routine. She is dressed in very tight and comfortable workout attire that highlights her impressive physique as a former hunter. She is momentarily startled by his sudden appearance and wonders why he is there while her daughter is away at work. Taekyung explains that he was with Hyun just yesterday and knows she isn't home. Eun becomes a bit defensive and reminds him that since he is officially being with her daughter, he should be focusing his attention solely on her. She warns him that he absolutely cannot repeat the bold behavior he displayed during their last encounter. Taekyung realizes that she has misunderstood his intentions and decides that it is time to be completely honest with her. He explains the truth about his awakening and the fact that he has transcended into a new kind of hunter. To prove he isn't making things up, he manifests a glowing orb of fire in his palm, leaving her in total shock. He leaves out the more personal details of his cardio management system, but emphasizes that he is no longer the weak boy she used to protect. Yoon is genuinely proud of his progress and pulls him into a warm, celebratory hug. She reflects on how he has grown into a strong and capable man. Taekyung takes advantage of the positive atmosphere to ask for a professional favor. He tells her that he wants to learn the way of the sword from her, knowing that she was once a legendary warrior. Yoon is touched by the request and agrees to help, thinking that it is a wonderful idea for them to train together. She believes that his responsible nature will make him an excellent student. They head down to the basement gym, a place that brings back many memories of watching Hoen practice as a child. Taekyung notices that Eun's enthusiasm for the workout is quite high, and her sussy choice of clothing makes it difficult for him to stay focused on the training. He tells himself that he needs to see her as a professional mentor, but his eyes keep drifting to how charming she looks in her athletic gear. The training session begins, and Eun proves that she hasn't lost any of her former strength. She tells him to stay focused and block her strikes carefully, warning him that even a practice session can be dangerous if he is not serious. Taekyung tries to hold back his power to be polite, but he is quickly overwhelmed by the speed and intensity of her attacks. He finds himself pinned down and realizes that he has a long way to go before he can match her capabilities. Eun realizes she might have been a bit too forceful and offers a sincere apology, explaining that she hasn't trained in a long time and struggled to control her strength. They decide to take a short break to recover, and Eun mentions that her muscles are already feeling a bit sore. Taekyung recognizes this as the perfect opportunity to utilize his unique skills and offers to give her a relaxing massage. As he prepares to help her, his digital secretary, Sai, interrupts his thoughts with a notification. The system announces that he has recently unlocked a new skill called Gentle Hands. The AI explains that this technique is specifically designed to maximize the management of a partner's internal stress. Taekyung is a bit frustrated by the AI's cryptic explanation and wonders if the tool is truly as effective as the system claims. He pushes aside his doubts and places his hands on Eun's shoulders to begin the session. The effect of the new skill is immediate and powerful, catching both of them by surprise. Eun feels a sudden and intense wave of cardio heat spreading through her body and wonders why she is reacting so strongly. She finds herself struggling to maintain her calm demeanor as the cardio management session begins to take hold. Internally, Eun is in a state of total confusion because she had even tried to manage her own internal cardio tension before Taekyung arrived. She realized that despite her best efforts to stay composed, his unique techniques were far more impactful than she ever imagined. Taekyung continues his work, realizing that his journey to becoming a top-tier manager has just reached an entirely new level of intensity. The morning sun brings with it a massive windfall, as a system notification confirms that Taekyung has successfully acquired 470 transcended points. However, the payout comes at a heavy physical cost, and as he looks in the mirror, he sees a man who has been through a total spiritual and physical ringer. He realizes that his trusty digital secretary left out a very important detail about his new skill, as it seems those gentle hands of his have a way of making him get a bit too caught up in the moment. He discovers that the technique causes him to be carried away by his partner's intense emotions, leading him to work far harder and longer than he ever intended. He scolds the high-functioning voice in his head for not giving him a fair warning and demands that the skill be deactivated before he accidentally runs himself into the ground again. The scent of a legendary feast eventually draws him to the kitchen, where he finds a table absolutely loaded with delicious side dishes that would make a king jealous. Un stands there in her apron, looking remarkably refreshed and full of energy, which is a sharp contrast to Taekyung's dazed and exhausted state. She greets him warmly as her son and asks if he is finally awake, but Taekyung finds it nearly impossible to pretend like everything is perfectly normal after the sheer cardio intensity of the previous night. He can see her fidgeting with a mixture of embarrassment and genuine happiness, realizing that even a legendary S-rank hunter is struggling to find the right words for their new situation. Un tries to keep things casual by telling him to just focus on his meal, but the memory of him being so bold and assertive is clearly playing on repeat in her mind. Taekyung understands that the shift from being a childhood son figure to a personal manager has left her feeling more vulnerable and seen than she has been in decades. When he prepares to leave, her playful guard finally drops, and she admits with a deep blush that she was genuinely happy. He saw her as a woman because she had been feeling quite lonely for a very long time. Taekyung offers to come by more often to help her maintain her balance, and as he receives a sweet and cheerful farewell, he realizes that he has successfully helped his most important ally find her spark again. As he walks down the street later that evening, he sends a quick update to Hun to let her know that the mission was a total success and that her mother is doing well. He finally lets out a long breath of relief, thinking that he can finally enjoy a well-deserved rest and let his poor body recover from his marathon of management duties. However, his peace is short-lived as his phone buzzes with a message from the arrogant archer, Shahi, who is already checking to see if he is free for another cardio session tomorrow. Even though he jokingly tells her he is a very busy man, the thought of seeing his high-value target again makes his professional curiosity flare back to life. When she tries to tease him by calling him a professional bum, he decides to lean into his confident manager persona and sends back a cheeky reply about her own comfort during their next workout, officially booking his next appointment before he even makes it back to his front door. Taekyung finds himself standing at the bustling Gimpo Warp Gate terminal and wonders if his life is moving a bit too fast for his own comfort. He reflects on the fact that he is about to embark on a tropical getaway with a woman he has only encountered once before and considers it a bit reckless, even by his new professional standards. He feels a sudden wave of anxiety as he imagines the absolute disaster that would occur if Hun ever discovered his secret travel plans, realizing that his favorite ally would likely have a very loud reaction to the news. His internal panic is interrupted by the arrival of Shahi, who looks like she is ready for a luxury photo shoot. She has brought along a very stoic and professional woman named Eunbyul, who introduces herself as Shahi's personal maid with a level of formality that leaves Taekyung feeling like a commoner. When he asks about their final destination, Shahi casually mentions heading to her private vacation home, as if owning a secret island in the Pacific is a standard requirement for most people. They soon arrive at a stunning location where a massive luxury villa dominates the landscape. Taekyung is genuinely stunned to see that the vacation home is significantly larger than any building he has ever lived in, and finds Shahi's wealth to be a bit intimidating. Shahi enjoys his look of pure shock and continues to tease him by calling him a feral dog, even suggesting that he might be more comfortable living in a high-end pet house. Taekyung is irritated by her constant arrogance, but realizes he has to stay on his best behavior as long as her professional maid is watching his every move. While she goes inside to get ready, Taekyung takes a quiet stroll along the shore and lets the sound of the ocean wash over him. The crashing waves trigger a sudden and vivid memory of his childhood, when Eun would take him and a very young Hoon to the beach for summer fun. He recalls how Yoon would always look out for them, and wonders if he should invite Yoon on a real vacation once they both have a bit more free time. His peaceful reflection ends abruptly when she reappears on the sand, looking like a total summer goddess in a very sussy white cloth. Taekyung admits to himself that she looks remarkably nice, and that the look suits her perfectly, which only feeds into Shahi's massive ego. She admits with a surprisingly soft expression that this is actually her first time wearing that cloth because her elite background never gave her the chance to be a normal girl. She tells him that since they are finally alone, she feels no need to hold back her true feelings or her intense cardio needs. Taekyung tries to act dominant by telling her he might need to discipline her soon for being so arrogant, but Shahi is completely unfazed. She playfully mentions that her maid is still nearby to keep him in check and asks if he can help her apply some sunscreen before they get down to business. Taekyung is frustrated that she knows exactly how to manipulate him, but follows her lead toward a beach umbrella that the maid seemingly set up in the blink of an eye. He realizes that he is completely going along with her flow today, but decides to focus on the task at hand. As he pours out the lotion and begins the management session, she grumbles that his touch is far too light and ticklish. She demands that he do it properly and show her some real conviction, which makes Taekyung realize he was being a bit too timid. He offers a quiet apology for being stupid and decides to stop holding back, applying his unique cardio management techniques with a level of intensity that makes the elite archer gasp in surprise. The atmosphere on the quiet beach quickly becomes thick with tension as Taekyung targets her with practiced precision. She finds herself overwhelmed by the feeling and pleads for him to wait just a second because she is worried about her maid seeing them in such a sussy position. Taekyung is far beyond caring about an audience at this point and continues to provide the high-quality cardio relief she demanded, knowing that a professional manager's work is never truly done until the client is completely satisfied. The sun begins to set over the luxury villa as the marathon cardio session finally comes to an end, leaving Shahi looking like a woman who has been through a spiritual and physical transformation. She trembles with exhaustion and grumbles about her lower back being in total shambles, which leads Taekyung to playfully wonder if he should aim for a much gentler approach during their next cardio encounter. Shahi immediately fires back with her usual prickly attitude and insists that if he is the one struggling with his stamina, he shouldn't use her as a convenient excuse. She teases him by calling him a weak and fragile male, while hiding behind her usual shield of arrogance, yet her flushed face and racing heart suggest that her common sense might have vanished along with her tension. Taekyung observes her while she is draped in one of his white shirts and notes that the oversized garment is actually doing a fairly good job of keeping her covered. Shahi seems momentarily distracted by the scent of the shirt and admits that the lingering man smell is practically assaulting her senses, though Taekyung finds it hilarious that she is the one currently making a move on his laundry. The playful bickering is eventually interrupted by the arrival of Eunbyul, who remains as stoic and professional as ever, as she checks to see if the two of them had a productive time together. The maid offers to serve a late meal, but the intensity of the cardio management session has left Shahi wanting nothing more than a long rest in a quiet room. As she prepares to head upstairs, Shahi gives Taekyung a surprisingly sweet and genuine smile while telling him to rest well, a sharp contrast to the cold air persona she displays to the rest of the world. Taekyung watches her go and reflects on how tiresome her life must be as the future of the Dokyeong group, constantly being judged for every action and unable to vent her frustrations to anyone within her elite circle. He follows Eunbyul through the halls and finds himself being questioned about the origins of his relationship with the young lady, offering a simple explanation about helping her through a difficult moment in the dungeon. Eunbyul notes that her mistress has opened up to him with a level of vulnerability she rarely shows to anyone else, which makes Taekyung wonder if the maid is feeling a spark of jealousy. However, the atmosphere shifts into something much more serious as Eunbyul turns toward him with a dark and warning expression. She reminds him that since she was hired by the corporation, she can never be the person Shahi leans on, and she warns him that any crack in their relationship could lead to messy complications for the young lady's reputation. She urges him to be extra careful if he truly treasures their connection, making him realize that being the personal manager for an elite heiress involves navigating a very dangerous social landscape. With the vacation officially at an end, the scene shifts back to the city, where Taekyung returns to his life as the rising star, Kim Song-cheol. He makes his way to the Hunters' Autonomous Union and finds the atmosphere buzzing with anticipation. The cute receptionist greets him with a nervous yet excited expression, clutching a set of official documents as if they were a prize. She tells him that the moment he has been waiting for has finally arrived and reveals that his promotion exam results are in, signaling that his journey to the top is about to enter an entirely new and more challenging rank. Taekyung stands at the registration desk and feels the weight of the moment as the clerk hands him a mysterious envelope. She admits that she purposefully avoided looking at the contents because she did not want to spoil the surprise for him. He takes a deep breath and carefully tears the paper while his heart races with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. His eyes widen as he sees the word pass printed in bold letters, which confirms that he is now officially recognized as a B-rank hunter. The clerk is absolutely starstruck by his achievement, and Taekyung cannot help but lean into the moment with a bit of newfound arrogance. He enjoys the praise, and even playfully asks her to repeat his new rank slowly, just so he can savor how good it sounds. Shortly after his promotion, he meets up with his childhood friend, who is already curious about his sudden request to see her. He decides to skip the modesty and immediately flaunts his higher status by telling her that when a prestigious B-rank hunter calls, a person simply has to show up. Hyun is momentarily stunned by his cocky behavior, but she eventually finds his confidence quite charming and realizes that her favorite training partner has reached a level that deserves a serious celebration. She leans in a very personal suggestion about how they should commemorate the occasion by getting approval from her own high-ranking status. Taekyung notes that her idea of a reward sounds more like something she just wanted to do for herself anyway, and calls her an obscene brat for being so forward. They decide to start their evening with a few drinks, which leads to a very energetic walk toward a more private location. Hyun is in high spirits, but the celebration eventually takes its toll, as she ends up completely passed out across the bed in a very sussy position. Taekyung looks down at her with a mixture of amusement and exhaustion, while realizing that his partner has a very low tolerance for festivities. His quiet moment is interrupted when Eun appears in the room and looks confused by the sight of her daughter, lying there like a fallen soldier. Taekyung tries to explain that she was just a bit too excited about his big news and simply could not handle the thrill of the moment. Eun is curious about what could have triggered such a reaction, and Taekyung proudly announces his promotion to a B-rank hunter. The news hits her like a physical force and leaves her staring at him in total disbelief as she processes the reality of his rapid growth. She immediately declares that this is no time for acting so leisurely and brings out a collection of bottles to start a celebration of her own. Taekyung realizes that he is about to face a very different kind of battle as they begin to match each other drink for drink. He starts to feel the strain on his physical condition and worries that his internal organs are taking a more serious hit from the alcohol than they ever would in a dungeon. The atmosphere becomes increasingly heavy as the alcohol takes hold of both of them, and Taekyung notices that Eun is becoming quite emotional. She looks at him with a hazy expression and notes that he is not in any position to judge her daughter for passing out, since he is also struggling to stay upright. Taekyung realizes that the two women are exactly alike in their habits, and he finds the situation to be quite overwhelming. Eun starts acting with a level of boldness that catches him completely off guard, as she reminds him that he has not called her mom a single time tonight. She expresses her frustration by claiming that all the hard work she put into raising him feels useless if he is going to be so cold to her now. Taekyung feels like the situation is driving him nuts because he cannot find a way to calm her down. She eventually sinks to the floor and starts acting very sussy to start a cardio session. Taekyung realizes that his quiet evening has once again transformed into an intense management crisis, and he can only marvel at the fact that he is being targeted by a legendary former S-rank hunter in his own living room. Taekyung stares at the breakfast spread with the expression of a man who has forgotten how to function as a human being. Even though the table is filled with delicious stew and side dishes, he finds himself wondering if his body is even capable of processing food after the marathon of festivities from the previous night. Yoon is busy in the kitchen, but she looks remarkably flustered as she watches him struggle while she prepares the morning meal. When he suggests going to wake up her daughter, she practically vibrates with nervous energy and tells him to just sit down and focus on the hot food before it gets cold. He eventually tries to sneak away by claiming he needs to use the bathroom, but she spots his suspicious movement instantly. She calls him a total liar and realizes that he is actually planning to stir up some trouble in the bedroom, despite her warnings to stay put. The domestic standoff is interrupted by the sudden arrival of Hun, who looks like she is in the middle of a frantic getaway. She rants about the absolute unfairness of having to head into work at such a ridiculous hour, while Taekyung notes that the sun has barely started its shift. He observes her panic state and concludes that she is likely running away to avoid the massive embarrassment of their recent sussy behavior. She tries to play it off by pretending she has absolutely no memory of their intense connection, claiming that the alcohol must have given her a convenient case of total amnesia. Taekyung finds the whole routine a bit too predictable for his liking and realizes she is just using a classic cliché to save her dignity. She continues her defensive speech by insisting that no respectable woman would ever act so wild before slamming the door behind her with a final shout of love. Taekyung smiles at the chaos and decides that a few days of cooking her favorite meals will be enough to mend her wounded pride. A few days later, the scene shifts to the Hunters' Autonomous Union, where Taekyung is back in his professional disguise as the rising star Kim Seong-chul. He settles his business at the counter and asks for his payment to be handled as usual, while keeping his true identity hidden behind his signature black mask. He is just about to make a quiet and successful exit when a familiar voice stops him in his tracks. A woman calls out his alias with a level of certainty that makes his heart skip a beat, and he turns to find her, observing him closely. He realizes that being a famous masked hunter involves much more social risk than he originally anticipated, as the woman asks for direct confirmation of his identity. Taekyung confirms his identity to the striking blonde woman, while the receptionist watches the exchange in total disbelief. The woman reveals that she was the one who originally requested the black slime materials and expresses her desire to hire him for a special designated mission. Taekyung finds himself feeling a bit impressed by his own growing reputation as a rising star, even though he is still hiding behind his black mask. However, his moment of pride is quickly ruined when she starts yelling at him for ignoring her many phone calls and messages over the last few days. She finds it incredibly arrogant for a mere B-rank hunter to be so hard to reach, and she demands that he show a bit more respect to his important clients. Taekyung tries to defend himself by suggesting that she could have simply handled the monsters herself if she was in such a frantic hurry. This only makes her even angrier, as she screams about the true meaning of retirement and how she should not have to lift a finger for such menial tasks anymore. Taekyung notices the receptionist cowering in her chair and realizes that his new client is likely a very powerful but very unstable individual. He decides to play it safe by offering a sincere apology for his busy schedule and asking if the job is still open for him to take. The woman pouts and admits that she does not have any other reliable options available to her anyway, so she agrees to let him help her out. They decide to move their conversation to a more private location to avoid the growing crowd, and the woman leads him straight to her shop at the Hotsuga pharmacy. Taekyung follows her inside and finds a workspace that is so cluttered and messy, he realizes she must actually live there among her ingredients and old coffee cups. His professional composure is tested once again when the woman begins to prepare her clothing without a single word of explanation. He stands there frozen in shock until he notices her long pointed ears and realizes that his mysterious client is actually a legendary elf. Taekyung covers his eyes and accuses her of being a disgrace who lured him home just to reenact a scene from a questionable comic book. The elf remains completely unfazed by his reaction and claims that back in her time, this was just a normal and comfortable way for men and women to live together. Taekyung is highly skeptical of her excuses because he knows elves live for a very long time, but he is pretty sure they were never cavemen. He decides to push her buttons by making a cheeky comment about the reason for her aging and saggy physique, sends her into a total rage. Despite the constant bickering, Taekyung feels a familiar thump in his chest and realizes that his body is reacting to her bold presence, despite his best efforts to stay calm. He tells himself that he is a professional and not just looking for a good time, but he remembers the system's warning about needing new partners to maximize his point collection. He looks at the beautiful elf and decides that she is exactly the kind of jackpot he needs to keep his hunter career moving forward at a high speed. The woman offers him a deal where she will pay him in rare and powerful potions instead of money, because the market for medicine is currently very unstable for solo freelancers. Taekyung acknowledges that having a steady supply of potions from a master pharmacist is a great opportunity, but he lets her know that he has something much more personal in mind. He steps closer and captures her chin in his hand to show her that he is no longer just a humble hunter for hire. He tells her with a confident smile that while the potions are nice, his real price for the mission is to spend a long and energetic cardio night by her side. Taekyung is walking through the city while maintaining his mysterious hunter persona when a familiar voice calls out his alias and causes him to stop in his tracks. He turns to find Yuri standing there with a radiant smile and a playful wave as she mentions how long it has been since they last met. She seems to be in incredibly high spirits, but her expression quickly shifts into a pout as she admits to feeling a bit neglected lately. She confesses that she actually worried he might have grown bored of her company, which makes Taekyung realize how much his attention means to her. He decides to ease her mind by revealing that he has simply been waiting for the right moment to show her something special. He reaches into his belongings and pulls out a crisp, white envelope, which he presents to her with a look of genuine pride. Yuri is momentarily stunned as she realizes he is handing over the official recommendation letter he asked for previously. She wonders if his enthusiastic reaction means he is truly happy with her. Work. Taekyung celebrates the moment with a level of excitement that borders on being a total fanboy, while Yuri basks in the praise. She stands tall with a confident look and notes that he finally understands why she is the absolute best older sister figure he could ever ask for. Taekyung offers her a warm and sincere thank you, which makes Yuri decide that a simple verbal appreciation is not nearly enough to settle the score. She tells him that since he is so satisfied with her favor, he should probably be prepared to give her a proper reward in return. She suggests that they skip the pleasantries and get straight to their usual routine of intense cardio management as a way to celebrate his progress. Yuri attempts to keep things civil by asking if he is hungry or if he is craving a specific expensive meal, but her internal thoughts are far more focused on a different kind of appetite. She realizes that this is the perfect chance to appeal to him with her womanly charm, and she strikes a pose to ensure his eyes are fixed solely on her. Taekyung remains calm and asks her if there is anything in particular that she likes to enjoy when they are alone together. This direct approach causes Yuri to completely lose her composure as she begins to stutter and tremble under the weight of her own excitement. She eventually lets her guard down and blurts out a very honest and very loud confession about her preference for his manly, cardio-like presence and special strength. The two of them soon find themselves in the quiet of a room where the air is thick with anticipation and the promise of a long night ahead.